Right here.
Thank you all.
I just started the recording. Commissioner Cook, you can start anytime.
All right. Our live, it is 9 a.m. We're here for our regular Tuesday morning board meeting for October 27th. We have a full complement of commissioners this morning in our respected offices. With that, if you would join me with a pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance,
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America,
and to the
to
republic,
the republic which stands
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
and justice for all.
and liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item on our agenda this morning is bid openings for CRP 617, the Koen Bridge replacement. We have 8 bids this morning. It'll open. The first is Harry Johnson, Plumbing and Excavation from Walla Walla. The second is Westland Construction from Spokane Valley. Third is Raz Construction from Bellingham. Fourth is N.A. Dagerstrom from Spokane Valley. Number 5 is Apollo from Kennewick. Number 6 is Granite Construction from Yakima. Number 7 is Clearwater Construction from Spokane. Number 8 is Fairline Bridge Incorporated from Staten, Oregon. And number 9 and final is Nelson Construction from Walla Walla. So as soon as we get those opened and recorded, I'll break back in with the numbers. So we'll carry on with the agenda as presented. Our second item on the agenda this morning is refunding bonds presentation from Davidson Company. Jim, are you going to handle that?
Yes, I'll handle that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Honored to be on the call. As you may all recall, I'm the bond underwriter to Franklin County. I've worked on a number of projects going all the way back to, I think, 1993 with the track facility. So we've refinanced a number of the bonds for interest cost savings, and you have the opportunity to refinance the 2012 limited tax general obligation bond. I think, Karen, do the commissioners have a copy of my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we do.
If you turn to page 1, you can see the bond market interest rate trend. It's interesting when you look to the far right. On March 10th, we did a financing for North Mason Regional Fire Authority, and we hit the lowest of the low at that point. A week later, one of the major spikes occurred, came back down, went back up, came back down. So one of the things that we really stress in this type of market is to have flexibility. We've seen the interest rates creep up a little bit as we approach the election, and so we'll just watch it. Over the last 3 weeks, interest rates have been fairly flat. But that's one of the things with COVID and the impact on the market is to have that flexibility. And if we do see rates all of a sudden spike up, 1 week, then we'll be the first to suggest postponing it. But right now we don't foresee that. If you turn to page 2, you can see the bond rating, and currently the county is rated AA-, which is very good. That's considered high investment grade. The higher your interest rate, the lower the interest cost. Right now the rating agencies are conservative when it comes to awarding rating upgrades because of the impact on COVID nationally. It's surprising to hear that a lot of communities are doing really well economically as far as sales tax revenue and other things despite COVID. The four key factors that Standard & Poor's will focus on is looking at your economy, major employers, top 10 taxpayers, assess valuation growth, looking at how much debt you have, if you have any future plans, financial performance as far as the last 5 years of financials and your unrestricted cash balance, and then looking at management factors as far as how you budget, financial forecasts, audits, and in-house financial reports. Any questions so far?
Jim, this is Commissioner Peck. Can you just give us a 5-second snapshot of where Eastern Washington counties tend to be in terms of grades? Do you know offhand? Are we kind of in the norm, high, low?
I would say you're in the norm. From memory, I believe Banner County was AA+, but they've paid off all their debt. And then I'm trying to think. I think Douglas County might be, Grant County. I'm working on a project with them, and they're currently rated AA-. So I think that's a good comparable.
Okay, thank you.
If we turn to page 3, you can see a lot of numbers. So you look to the far right, and there is the estimated annual net savings, and that's a net number with financing costs already deducted. And so right now we're estimating that the total net savings over the 21 years remaining on the 2012 bond is $1,660,000. The average annual savings is just over $79,000 a year. That'd be a direct savings to the current expense fund. And then you see the estimated net present value savings percent at 8.8%. The industry standard is to achieve a net present value savings percent of 5% or greater. So, by industry standards, this is a very cost-effective refinancing. And I'll just take one step back and give you a quick recap. The 2012 bonds were issued to expand the courthouse facilities, expand criminal justice facilities and jail facilities, and then also purchase computer software. And in 2011, the voters approved a 0.3% sales tax. That expires on December 30th, 2041. And so these bonds mature on January 1st, 2042. And so it wouldn't, this refinancing does not extend the term. It just matches the original maturity date. And you're refinancing outstanding interest rates that range from 3.25% to 4.50%. Currently, the estimated true interest cost is 2.61%. Any questions on all the numbers?
Go ahead, Jim. Thank you.
Okay. Page 4 shows the schedule going forward. And so documents have been drafted and are being updated before you today. And Lee Marquisio, the bond attorney with Foster Garvey, will talk after me on the bond resolution. So that's on your agenda today. On October 30th, we'll have a rehearsal conference call with county staff to prepare for the rating presentation to S&P Global Ratings. And then after that, we also have another conference call, what they call a due diligence conference call, to kind of review all the facts and figures in the draft preliminary official statement. And then on November 4th, staff and myself, along with the 2 rating analysts, will have a 90-minute conference call to present information on the county. Also on November 4th, we would release the preliminary official statement and begin marketing bonds to prospective investors, individual investors, banks, insurance companies, and others. And then, subject to market conditions on November 18th, set the final interest rates, and then the issue would close on December 15th. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Jim, this is Commissioner Didier. I'm back on page 3, and I'm looking at the annual payments. The blue will be the new payments?
The blue are the old payments.
Okay.
Under the column annual payment, that'll be the new payment.
Okay. Why was this set up with such a low payment at the beginning, and then 2024 it bumps clear up to $1.1 million?
Yeah, it's a great question. The bonds are not callable, not prepayable until July 1st, 2022. So then you definitely don't want to refinance the January 1st, 2022 principal payment because it's not callable, not prepayable.
Okay.
And we looked at the January 1st, 2023 and ran that through our model, and it's better to leave that one out also. So when you take the payments on 2022 and 23 and then add those to the payments there in blue for 2022 and 23, you add those up, and the difference is the net effect is it's still going to lower your annual payment in 2022 and 23 by approximately $79,000.
Yeah.
And so it's just looking at the combination of what bonds yield the greatest savings. The other thing that happened in 2017 is Congress eliminated what they call tax-exempt advance refunding bonds. So when you look at refinancing, this one would be done on a taxable basis, but interest rates are very low and it's still cost effective. But it's different than like a mortgage, where it's prepayable at any time. In this case, you have to wait. You have to look at it and say, okay, if my call date is on July 1st, 2022, what are the savings? And then what are the best combinations of maturities to refinance?
So, Jim, Commissioner Peck again. So it'd be fair to say that having these lower payments up front has been very advantageous to the county, especially with the timing of this action that we're looking at today.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's definitely great savings, and then you're taking advantage of low interest rates.
Yep. Almost a perfect schedule. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Any further questions for Jim?
Commissioner, this is Keith. I do have one that they could perhaps respond to, if you don't mind.
Please.
I just want to make sure that we're clear regarding the relationship, Mr. Nelson, that you and Mr. Marquisio have with the county. Is that considered a fiduciary responsibility that you have?
Well, with the Dodd-Frank Act changed some of the rules. So technically, no, in that definition, but the reality is we work very aggressively, and we have years past serving the county. So looking at the documents, working closely with staff and the bond attorneys, and then trying to set the interest rates as low as we can. Does that answer your question, Keith?
Yeah, I believe it does.
And this is Lee from the Foster Garvey firm. And so we are not affiliated with Jim and the D.A. Davidson firm. We are your lawyers as bond counsel. And so we have the same legal and ethical obligations to you as Mr. Santa, the prosecuting attorney's office. So, yeah, we are your lawyers, and we represent only you and have our legal professional responsibility duties to you in that regard.
Okay, that would have been my next question, so thank you for answering that.
Yeah, you bet.
Anything further then?
Well, with that, maybe we'll turn it over to Lee and he can explain the bond resolution.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, commissioners. Apologize, I can't be there in person today under our various edicts from Olympia. But, Foster Garvey is proud and honored to be bond counsel again on this transaction. We've served you for over 30 years, according to the records I look back at. And most recently, Jeff Nave in our office was your primary contact. As bond counsel, our main duty is to draft all of the legal documents to document the bond transaction. And one of the key documents in that is our bond opinion. It's an unqualified opinion that the bonds are issued in accordance with state law and in compliance with federal tax laws, which both of those are met in this transaction so far, and we are here to make sure that that is true all the way through. We also assist the county in complying with federal securities laws as it markets these bonds to the public, as Jim does. And we have also been asked to draft the official statement for the bond transaction, which is essentially the marketing or offering document the county prepares that Jim uses to market the bonds. As you know, this bond issuance is a general obligation refunding bond issuance for savings purposes, as Jim has outlined. The county pledges its full faith and credit. That's the security. Your taxing power is what is going to pay back these bonds. And the key limitation is whether or not the bonds are issued within the county's debt capacity. Quite frankly, the county has a lot of debt capacity. You're not a heavy borrower, and so that's not an issue at all in this case. The main thing that this resolution does is it delegates authority to Mr. Johnson and Ms. Kelzer to negotiate the bond purchase agreement with Mr. Nelson. So on the pricing day, Jim will price the bonds and put together a bond purchase agreement. We will negotiate and work that out with him on the pricing day and with Mr. Johnson and Ms. Kelzer. And this resolution authorizes them to accept the bond purchase agreement on behalf of the county. This has been the standard practice for about the last 10 years, and it allows them to price the bonds on the day without having to call you all back for a special meeting to approve the bond purchase contract. So that is essentially what this resolution does. The other thing it does is within that delegation, it sets various parameters, including the savings threshold of 5% that Jim mentioned. And so the bond purchase contract must be within them. So it's not a complete delegation, it's a delegation with very strict parameters, and those are at the very end of the resolution in the very first exhibit. So that's basically what the resolution does, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or go over any specific provisions if that would be helpful.
Any questions,
This is
gentlemen?
Commissioner Peck. Yep, Commissioner Peck here. The 5% was alluded to and explained by Mr. Nelson, but presumably the board can set those parameters where it feels appropriate. For example, if we felt that 6% was more appropriate. Am I correct in that?
Yep, that's absolutely correct.
Any further questions? Well, thank you both, Jim and Lee. And hearing no other questions, I would entertain a motion for Resolution 2020-229.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Peck. I move for approval of Franklin County Resolution 2020-229 as presented.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for presenting this today.
Thank you all.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Lee and Jim.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too, thanks. All right, with that, we do have some numbers on the CRP 617 Koen Bridge replacement. I'll read them as presented. Harry Johnson Plumbing and Excavation, $1,515,075.40. 1515075.40. Westland Construction from Spokane, $1,380,218.00. 1380218.00. Raz Construction from Bellingham is $1,339,243.00. 1339243 and no cents. N.A. Daggerstrom from Spokane Valley, $1,354,167 and no cents. That is 1354167 and no cents. Okay. This. Okay. Apollo from Kennewick is $1,122,949.24. That is 1,122,949.24. Number 6 is Granite Construction from Yakima, and their bid is $1,284,666.91. 1,284,666.91. Clearwater from Spokane, $1,511,744 and no cents. 1,511,744 and no cents. Fairline Bridge Incorporated from Staten, Oregon, $1,564,522.92. 1,564,522.92. Nelson Construction from Walla Walla, $1,389,452.19. That is 1,389,452.19. So with that, we have a engineer's estimate of $1,062,614. 1,062,614.00. So With that, they will return to the office and check for the responsible bid, and should be on next week's consent agenda. Thank you, Kathleen. So, all right. With that, we will move on to our closed record appeal public hearing. Appealing CUP 219.09. And this is a closed record hearing, appeals hearing, Aaron Refiel appellant for Mirror Ministries applicant. This is a closed record appeal hearing regarding the Franklin County Planning Commission's March 10th, 2020 recommendation to the Franklin County Board of County Commissioners for Conditional Use Permit 2019-09, Mirror Ministries. As a closed record appeal hearing, appellant arguments shall describe particular errors committed by the hearing body with specific references to the administrative record. Board may question any party concerned disputed issues, but shall not request information not in the administrative record. The order of the hearing, planning staff will provide staff report. Appellant shall present their oral arguments. Board members may ask questions of the appellant. Applicant shall present their response. Board members may ask questions of the applicant. And then final board member questions or discussion. Close the appeal hearing, and the Board of County Commissioners renders a decision. So with that preamble,
Mr. Chairman.
yes.
Commissioner Peck, before we proceed any further, I would ask you as the chair to inquire of the board members as to whether or not there are any conflicts or potential conflicts of interest among board members.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, and I take that as a question of my sister-in-law, where it was deemed that she's my sister. She's not. She's my sister-in-law. I have not talked to her about this at all.
Okay.
So I don't feel there's a conflict here.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, the purpose of my question had nothing to do with Commissioner Didier. It has to do with the fact that it is my intent this morning to recuse myself from this discussion, believing that public trust and confidence is essential to a fair and effective process. And while I'm entirely confident that I can be objective and I can make a reasonable, practical, well-substantiated decision, the reality is that it's not about my ability to make that judgment. It's about the perception of the parties and their right to be free of any concern that I may have a bias. And so I have donated financially to Mirror Ministries in the past, only on one occasion, but I have donated to them. And in the last 12 months, I've had indirect discussions through a third party about the possibility of acquiring land adjacent to this site, which is another potential perception of conflict. And for those two reasons, again, not because I don't think I can be fair and impartial, but because the public deserves to have a board hearing this that is absolutely free of any perceived conflict, I'm going to recuse myself and step away. I won't be voting, certainly, and I won't even be participating in the discussion, as is proper when one recuses himself. So I hope you understand the need to do that, and I thank you, and I'm going to step away at this time.
All right, thanks for that discussion. We will carry on. This is being presented by Director Derek Bratton. So, Derek, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. On December 12th, 2020, an application was submitted for a conditional use permit, file number CUP 2019-09, which is a request for the approval of a conditional use permit seeking the conversion of an existing single-family home and property to be used as residential group housing for abused youth, requiring a protected environment. There are 3 phases proposed, with each phase adding 6 additional beds for a total of 18 beds on the site. All 3 phases all 3 phases to be completed within 1 to 3 years as need and funding provide. The current use of the property is a single-family residence and a commercial dog kennel. And then CUP 2019-09 was presented by staff at an open record public hearing on February 4th, 2020. All written comments received by 4 p.m. February 4th, 2020 were provided to the Planning Commission and applicant at the February 4th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. Of the over 50 written comments received, comments fell into 2 general categories: 12 in opposition to the proposal, 40 in support of the proposal. Due to the volume of written comments received, staff was not able to prepare a response to those comments in advance of the hearing. Comments heard during the public hearing mirrored those provided in the written comments. A summary of the comments received in opposition to the proposal are as follows. The proposed use of the property for a home for abused use is not consistent with Franklin County Code. The proposal increases the risk of criminal activity in the area, and the applicant cannot make the property adequately secure for this population. The facility will negatively impact the aesthetics of the community. If approved, the CUP will allow for the development of multiple residential structures on a single property, and other landowners in the same zone are not permitted to do the same. There's no legal access to the property. A facility of this type's location is not supposed to be publicly known, and due to the press coverage, the population being served in this location is known, so they should seek to locate somewhere else that is unknown to the public. The facility will negatively affect real estate market values, and the proposed location is not consistent with Mirror Ministries' capital campaign flyers. Listed site assets. The comments received in support of the proposal primarily focused on community need for the proposal, the plight of the population to be served by the facility, that it would not increase the risk to the community, and how the site met the needs for the applicant to provide the services proposed. Many of the written comments in support were from social service agencies or groups serving the same or similar population. Some were from local residents and survivors of the abuse. Whereas the majority of comments received against the proposal were from the immediate vicinity of the site, the majority of comments in support of the proposal were from parties outside the immediate vicinity of the site. The applicant spoke about the proposal, and time was allowed for clarification by the Planning Commission. The Commission then heard testimony in support of the proposal from 13 individuals, 1 being the Director for Mirror Ministries, the applicant. Comments in support of the proposal primarily focused on the community need for the proposal, the plight of the population, that it was not increase the risk to the community, and how the site met the need. There was no neutral testimony, and 17 people presented public testimony against the proposal. And again, those mirror those already read. At the February 4th meeting, the 6 Planning Commission members in attendance discussed the proposal. Comments made, the record as provided, and suggested findings of fact. A motion was made for a recommendation that the Franklin County Board of Commissioners deny the request regarding application CUP 2019-09 with alternative findings of fact. The motion was seconded, and there was a tie vote, 3 for, 3 against the motion. Due to the late hour, nearing 11 p.m., the Planning Commission moved to table the item until the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting, which was seconded and approved. Proper notice was sent and posted notifying the applicant and public that the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting would be postponed until March 10, 2020. At the March 10, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, all 7 Planning Commissioners attended the meeting. Commissioner Didier was absent from the February 4th meeting, but was provided recorded copies of the meeting. Parties in opposition to the proposal questioned Commissioner Didier's right to vote on the matter. Staff presented this issue to the Franklin County Legal Department, which informed Commissioner Didier that due to her missing the February, she should read a declaration in the record and only vote if it was necessary to break the tie, as provided for in RCW 4236090, participation of challenged members of the decision-making body. Commissioner Didier read a declaration into the record regarding her being absent from the February 4th meeting, the fact that she was provided and listened to recordings of the meeting, and read the staff report, and that she was confident that she understood the matter. She did declare that as part of her 27 years of experience in planning locally, she did have a past professional relationship with Mr. Sharp, but did not know him personally. She also declared that she had no biases or conflicting relationships association with the parties regarding CUP 2019-09. Chair Perrette asked if any members of the Planning Commission objected to Planning Commissioner Didier's participation regarding CUP 2019-09. No Planning Commissioners objected. He then asked if anyone in the audience objected to the Planning Commissioner Didier's participation in any items on the agenda. No member of the audience objected to Planning Commissioner Didier's participation. A motion was made to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners the approval of CUP 2019-09. The motion was seconded. A roll call vote was called for. Commissioner Didier and 3 other Planning Commissioners voted to approve the motion, and 3 Planning Commissioners voted against the motion. So the location of this site is at 7192 Columbia River Road, Pasco, Washington. Bounded by the parcel is bounded to the west by Columbia River Road and Helm Drive to the south, and then farmland and a single to the east, and then there's a single family residential to the north. The reason for the appeal hearing is a claim that there were procedure violations occurred in the processing and review of CUP 2019-09, specifically violations of the Appearance of Fairness Doctrine, that staff made an error in law, and that CUP 2019-09 fails to meet conditional use permit legal standard. Yeah, I think that about summarizes it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Commissioner Didier?
Yeah, Derek, when you presented, do you feel like you were presented as a neutral, or were you in favor, or what how do you feel you presented? Because as I read through all this documentation, it sort of, and I read through the minutes, it sounds like you were advocating for it. Do you feel like you were?
That's okay. My role is, making my recommendation is based on the law. So under staff interpretation of the laws and the codes, my recommendation is it was approved because it met the requirements of law. And that would be the extent of the advocacy, whether it's the aspects of aesthetics, the belief that I do have a belief it can be made compatible with surrounding uses. As to whether I was advocating, I don't believe I was. I was merely reflecting that it meets the requirement of law, and that recommendation is based on that requirement of law. If the bodies dispute that or disagree with that interpretation, then they have me change it, and I make that change. But planning always makes a recommendation based on the interpretation of whether or not the proposal meets law, and that's the basis of our decision. The other bodies use these other, the six-pointed list of elements to compare and determine whether they agree with staff's interpretation of law.
Okay. Also, a few weeks ago, we had a retirement home where they were trying to split the house into two residences, two addresses, and we didn't allow that to happen when it could very well have met the law requirements, right?
No, in that case, duplex structures are not allowed in that zone. Whereas, so that's why that was recommended not to, because it's a single family zone, RS20 specifically. If it were a separate structure, that would have been a whole different question and a whole different approach. Or if they were seeking to expand within the actual structure, again, the recommendation of staff would probably have been different. But due to the fact that they were seeking to create a duplex structure, not
Okay.
Accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, you answered
the issue.
You answered that. As I read through this, it says that every one of these victims, these girls, will have a person with them. So instead of 18, we're going to have 36 people, correct?
I think the applicant would be better to speak to that.
Okay, I'll wait for that then. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Not at this point. Is our appellant on board or on the phone?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Commissioners. My name is Mark Fickes, Fickes. I'm a shareholder in the House of Northwest Law Firm in Yakima, and I'm here in my office with Mr. Henry Field, who participated
it sounds like you're in a tunnel.
Hey, Mark, are you on a speakerphone?
Yeah, I am. That's all I have.
Okay.
Is it difficult to hear me? I can. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just not coming through very clear on our microphone.
Okay, I apologize for that. I'll go ahead and use the headset. Again, I have Mr. Henry Field with me here in my conference room, socially distancing, of course. I'm teasing. But anyways, again, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Henry Field, who has a power of attorney for his parents, Louis and Jennifer Field. And they have a unique relationship to this piece of property. They actually used to be the owners of the property on which Mirror Ministry is looking to site a group care facility. And by the way, my clients are opposed to the granting of this permit, not because they don't provide a good service, they're not good people, or don't have a good ministry, but simply because of what they think are land use impacts. They don't believe that this is the proper location for this home. And before I get going into my argument, I do have only two commissioners, correct? Just Commissioner Peck and Commissioner Didier?
Negative. You have Commissioner Cook and Commissioner Didier.
Oh, okay. So Commissioner Cook, so Commissioner Peck recused himself.
Affirmative.
Okay, I apologize. You guys went through, I'm going to ask you one more question designed to just put of record any potential improper context. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Peck or Cook and Didier, have you spoke about this application with any third parties, whether they be opposed to the permit or in support of it, or even staff. I would just ask if you could both disclose for the record, have you spoke with anyone? Commissioner Didier said he has not spoken with his sister-in-law, Melinda. And by the way, I apologize in advance for calling her your sister. That was
no offense taken. And as far as your question goes, this is a topic out in the community, and as people approached me, I told them I cannot talk to them about it, but people have tried to bring it up and discuss it with me, but I would not discuss it with them.
Okay, all right.
And I have not had any conversation at all with anybody, so.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. That's a question that's normally asked. There's two questions. You usually ask, do you have any potential conflict of interest? And I appreciated that, Commissioner Peck recused himself after donating to Mirror Ministries. That's entirely appropriate. But all right, getting back to this, I'm from the Yakima Valley, although I do a lot of land use work down in your area, and I assume that you're both extremely familiar with the property. And I'm looking at a map right now, and it's really interesting. Basically, and I'm summarizing, I'm not saying anything new, I'm summarizing testimony in the record, but the people that are opposed to this permit are, my client owns all the property, those 5-acre lots platted immediately to the east that abut this proposed location. And their dream, it was ultimately that would be platted and ultimately developed for high quality residential neighborhoods consistent with your RC5 zone, which is the residential community zone, and it required 5-acre lot minimums. And you can see to the west is the Ridgeview Drive homes. Those have been developed. Those are high quality homes, anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million homes overlooking the Columbia River, developed on 1-acre lots. And those are the people that have the legitimate concerns we're going to go over today. And again, I don't think anybody begrudges Mirror Ministries. The services they provide are wonderful. It's just, we don't think that this is the best location for that. Let's talk about, Derek Bratton did a really good job of summarizing procedurally where we're at today, but I'm going to highlight and stress some things that we had concerns with. Let's talk about the first one is you guys, meaning Franklin County, has a relatively unusual zoning ordinance on special property use or conditional use permits. You have a lay commission of 7 members that make a recommendation only, and then ultimately it's the commissioners that are the ultimate decision-making body. But the planning commission has the open record hearing, and then they're supposed to make a recommendation to you. In this case, it came to you on unusual circumstances, which my client thinks were a little bit inappropriate. And again, I hope you both received a copy of my brief. I tried to write it relatively simply, and some of this is in my brief. I'm going to repeat a little bit of it, but I'll try to move quickly. But anyways, at the original open record hearing on February 4th, the Planning Commission deadlocked. And this is a tough one. Commissioners Lowe, Lank, and McMullen were opposed to the granting of the permit because they didn't think having 3 separate homes and an institutional commercial use was the right thing to do at this point. And the other 3 commissioners supported it. So it was deadlocked. Now, normally, that's not that unusual. I'm a land use attorney. I've represented cities and counties, and as long as you have a quorum, there's nothing wrong with a deadlock, unless it's legally required to break the deadlock. In this case, it's not. The Planning Commission just makes a recommendation. I think the net effect of the deadlock should have been, it should have gone up to you without a recommendation, or the legal effect should have been a denial. Now, Mr. Bratton, probably with the input of Jennifer Johnson, said in this unusual case, Planning Commission member Didier was allowed to break the tie because the motion made was a motion to deny at the original hearing. And so nobody ever made a motion to approve, but that's a futile act. That has no legal effect for me as an attorney. When a body is deadlocked, I don't think you have to make a motion to approve when you already have a 3-3 deadlock. So I don't think that saves it. So I'm just preserving this for potential future judicial appeals that I believe, and my client believes, that allowing Commissioner Didier, and it's not because she was unfair or biased, it's she wasn't there. Just like you both weren't there at the hearing, I wasn't here. We're reviewing the record and making a decision because that's allowed. But Planning Commission member Didier wasn't there to listen to the people, to judge their credibility. And that's why I think it was inappropriate to allow her to break a tie. Now, all that being said, you clearly, your zoning ordinance, you both do not have to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation. You can make your own decision. I think Derek's done a good job of outlining what your choices are today. We're asking that you deny the permit for the reasons we'll outline. You could remand it, you could add additional conditions, or all of the above. But I just wanted to raise that procedural defect. I don't think there's anything we can do to cure it at this point. And the normal cure would be a remand for a do-over, which you have the power to do. Now, again, it's important to note what this application is asking for. I'm going to call it for the rest of my presentation. There's a lot of different words used for what Mirror Ministries is asking for. Sometimes you'll hear, is it a group home? Is it a therapeutic facility? Is it a restoration home? I'm going to call it a group care facility, and I'm doing that for a particular reason. In fact, I'll make that argument now. I actually think the way that I read your own zoning ordinance is that a group care facilities are simply prohibited. It's not appropriate to process a permit and grant a permit for a group care facility. And here's my argument. I'm going to point to your own zoning ordinance. This property is zoned RC5, and RC5, what the uses that are allowed, both permitted outright, accessory uses, and conditional uses, are set forth in your zoning code at Franklin County Code 17.20 and all its subsections. And like most counties, you have permitted uses, then you have accessory uses, and then let me read to you conditional uses. It says the following uses are permitted upon issuance of a special permit. And then if you go to item G, is in girl, it says group homes are therapeutic centers. So the only allowed conditional uses in an RC5 zone is a group home or therapeutic center. And then, you might ask, if I was a commissioner, I'd ask, well, what's the definition of a group home? Well, I don't have to go very far. Your zoning code has a definition of a group home, and that's it. FCC 17.06.440. And I'm going to read to you the definition of a group home. And as I read this to you, it's one sentence. You tell me whether you think Mirror Ministries application meets this definition. A group home means more than 6 unrelated persons over the age of 16 years living together as a single housekeeping unit. Now, number one, by its own application, Mirror Ministry says they minister to young women ages 12 through, 18. So clearly they have some of their clients and crime victims are under the age of 16 years. They're not a group home. Now, and so they are not a listed conditional use in the R5 zone. Now let me read you what a group care facility is, and you have a definition for that, and I'm not making this up. This is it, Franklin County Code 17.06.430. Group care facility. A group care facility means any number of unrelated persons living together as a single housekeeping unit sponsored by a public or private service entity, whether supervision of the residence is provided on a full-time or part-time basis. Now, I think there's an argument that I think that's what we're dealing with, a group care facility. There's one big problem. Group care facilities are not allowed in the RC5 zone. Now, Derek, in his presentation before the Planning Commission, made an argument, yes, they are. And he calls this an unclassified use. And he cites to Franklin County Code 17.82010 and 17.82020. And let me read, but here's where I believe Derek is mistaken. It says unclassified uses may be permitted within any district, anything in the entire county, quote, where not otherwise prohibited. As I've just outlined for you, group care facilities are otherwise prohibited. They're not allowed. And his argument is they can go anywhere with a permit. I believe that's wrong. If it's not a listed conditional use, it cannot go in this zone. It can go in other zones, but not this one. So I'm going to leave it hanging there, but I think that's something, if forced to appeal to a court, I think is going to, I think the applicant's group care facility is not allowed in this zone. The other legal issue I have is, and I think Commissioner Didier mentioned that in one of his questions to Mr. Broughton, is this is an application for 3 separate residential structures on one 7-acre lot. Well, my client, Henry Field, couldn't put 3 separate residents on one 7-acre lot. You can only put one. And the only way you can do that is with some type of plat or a short plat. But that can't be done because you can't make the minimum lot size. So the 2 legal errors of processing this application, number one, I think their application should have been limited at most to 1 home on 1 lot. You guys know the rules. The normal rule is you can only put 1 home on 1 lot unless you can legally subdivide it. They can't. And you can't get around the subdivision laws by do a special use or conditional use permit process. So those 2 legal defects I'd like to put off record. I think they're inappropriate. In fact, I think that you should base your denial. All right, now moving on, I have some procedural issues with the way this application was handled. And again, Commissioner Didier, I appreciate you asked Derek Broughton a direct question. Were you an advocate? And by the way, I have nothing. I know Derek. He's a good planning staff member. He knows a lot, but I think he did go a little bit over the edge and acted as an advocate, which I think is inappropriate. And he did so in a number of ways. I've outlined them to you in the brief. I'm just going to summarize them for you now. Number one, before the Planning Commission hearing, which is the only chance that everybody gets to talk, and my clients were limited. I wish I could be here in front of you now in this COVID time. They were limited to 2 minutes, and it was tough. I'm an attorney, and I couldn't introduce myself in 2 minutes. And what he did is, number one, he prepared a staff report with proposed findings and conclusions, but they were all in support. And I have no problem with Derek finding, and let me tell you what the difference is between a finding and a conclusion. A finding, here, I'll make an easy one. This property is zoned RC5. That's a finding. There were 20 people opposed to it and 10 people in support. That's a finding. It's along Columbia River Road. That's a finding. But he went through and did the Planning Commission's job for them, and he actually tried to do it for you by coming to legal conclusions. Things like it's compatible, it's in harmony with the neighborhood, there's no safety issues. Those are all legal conclusions that shouldn't have been decided until after everybody had spoken, both for and against the proposal. So that's one thing. And by the way, normally in my experience, and again, I've been doing this for 34 years, when you know that there's going to be a hotly contested permit, and so there's going to be people on both sides. There's going to be, and there's nothing wrong with that. a planning staff simply they make neutral findings or they have findings both ways. Now, you'll notice that Derek did a good job. Now, he's given you, although he didn't have as much detail, he has provided both the commissioners with proposed findings in support of the permit and supporting denial. But again, he didn't do that before the planning commission. And then he also held workshops in advance that had some legal interpretations that I disagreed with. Again, lawyers can disagree, but one of the things he said was conditional use permits are where you negotiate conditions to approve a permit. No, that's not it. Conditional use permits are not allowed outright, and sometimes they're recognized as having land use impacts that justify denial. And so I think his workshops before an open record hearing were inappropriate. And again, I think if you read the record, the transcript at page 90 through 100, Derek honestly believes that this should be approved, and I think he was acting as an advocate. And again, you'll notice the planning commission didn't change one of his findings. They didn't make a new condition. They didn't change it. And I think sometimes planning commissions think it's their job they have one choice, is to accept the staff's findings or not. And they don't. They can develop their own. So anyways, those are the procedural arguments. Now let me move on, and I'll complete my presentation and then allow my client to speak, who this is really important to. But the legal arguments are contained at pages 9 and 10 of my brief. I hope you both had the opportunity to review it. And again, I apologize for its length, but I wasn't there at the hearing, and this is the only way I had to make my case. But you actually have 7 criteria. Derek outlined 6, but there's actually a 7th one. There's 7 criteria and standards that you have to apply before granting a special property use permit, even if it were allowed. Let's assume that this was a legal permit, but to approve this group care facility, this institutional commercial use in a residential zone, you have to show 7 things. And the first one is you have to have the quote, and I'm again reading from your own zoning ordinance, and this is one Derek missed, but it's the nature and location must not be detrimental to the intended rural residential environment. And that one comes right from your own zoning code, Franklin County Code 17.20.010. And then the next 6 are the ones Derek outlined that are contained in your special use permit ordinance, FCC 17.82. And they're at, let me see, I've got it right in front of me. They're at 0.82.080, and you got numbers A through F. And I'm not going to read them to you and go in. I'm just going to say what our position is. The first criteria there, so I'm just going to go through why my client would like you to deny this permit. Number 1, introducing multiple commercial uses. And, and this is, counseling, equine therapy. This is clearly a commercial or institutional use into a residential zone is detrimental to the neighborhood. And number 2, we don't think this proposal is in accordance with the goals and objective of the county's comprehensive plan. Now, you guys are familiar with the comprehensive plan. I went online and looked at your 2008 comprehensive plan, and, it has goals of protecting residential neighborhoods. In the land use element at purpose statement 7, it says individual neighborhoods determine the quality of urban life. Neighborhood planning and design can affect the availability and quality of housing. Goal 1, encourage development of neighborhoods which support a high quality of life. And it encourages, quote, projects which are designed to promote security and safety within a neighborhood and community context. Policy 2, develop neighborhood design compatibility standards. I won't bore you, but your own comp plan has lots of policies that it's not normally appropriate to introduce institutional or commercial uses into a residential neighborhood. And again, Derek's fine. So that's one. Number three, we think the proposal will adversely affect public infrastructure. Again, I think it'll have an impact on the roads. We think the existing access appears to go across another neighbor's property who's opposed to this, Wanda Louder. And I believe this would be increasing the trips per day from all the staff members going back and forth. Again, there could be up to 26 employees at this facility. Employees get breaks, they have lunch, probably 6 trips per day for each employee. So it's going to put a strain on the driveway and the roadway. So we think it will adversely affect public infrastructure. Number 4 is an important one. Again, this proposal has to be in harmony with the existing and planned future residential development. We don't think it is. This proposal is not in harmony with the existing and planned future development. Again, every property owner in the vicinity is opposed to this permit. And again, most of the Mirror Ministry support group were either affiliated with the organization or don't live in the area. And again, again, they provide a good ministry, but they don't live here. They don't have to live with the impacts that their facility provides. So my client thinks providing 24/7 counseling, private schools, equine therapy in the middle of a residential neighborhood is not appropriate. This just isn't the right location. It should be out further in a more rural area. Number 5, do the proposed structures discourage residential development? We think they do. Allowing, again, 3 more intensive use and allowing 3 homes on one lot where all the neighbors can't do the same, again, does impact the character of the neighborhood. And even if it were approved, it should be limited to simply use of the primary residence. Again, and that is something you could do as an additional condition. And number 6, the applicant's facility and full-time counseling business will produce more traffic than any permitted residential use. And last, our client reasonably believes that introduction of this commercial use will endanger the safety of the neighborhoods, primarily from the additional traffic and the risk of outside criminal elements. And again, almost every neighbor that testified was concerned not about Mirror Ministries supervising their crime victims, but mainly from outside criminal elements coming in. And in fact, as I pointed out to you, and it's part of the record, I think your local newspaper even admonished, normally Mirror Ministries likes to keep the location of these facilities top secret. Why? Because they're worried about the safety. They're worried about the people that traffic these young women will come in and do harm, and they're not going to care about property rights, property values. So safety is clearly, I think the applicant themselves basically admits that there are safety concerns here. So with that in mind, for those reasons, we would respectfully request that the commissioners deny this permit. So now I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners have now. Otherwise, I'd like to have my client, Mr. Henry Field, address you. Are there any questions at the present time for me?
I don't have anything. You covered them very well, and with that information you sent ahead of time, so.
I don't have any questions either, but I would like to hear from Mr. Shielding.
Hello, my name is Henry Field. Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I've been a resident of Franklin County for over 27 years. I run businesses in Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland. I live just over a mile away from the property we're discussing today, and have lived there since 1993. And as such, I feel like a member of the neighborhood and share the neighbors' concerns. I represent both myself and my parents, who own the adjacent properties to the east. My parents developed the property and built their home in Sagemore Kennels in 1995 and 96. My parents loved the property. If it was not for their age, they'd still be living there today. They also loved the neighborhood, and their neighbors were both friends and customers, and they enjoyed the social interaction with all of their neighbors. When my parents sold, they sold to a couple that wanted to run the kennels and live in the house. No one ever contemplated that structures of a beautiful home and a successful business would be considered for such a drastic change. If my parents would have had any clue of the potential of how this might affect the value and safety of the local neighborhood and their adjacent property, I'm sure they would have put restrictive covenants on the property to protect the neighborhood from things like this. My parents loved their neighbors and the neighborhood. In addition to the safety concerns of the neighborhood, I have concerns regarding the introduction of institutional facilities and activities to the area. In the late 80s and 90s, I was a board member of the Bailey Memorial Youth Ranch out of Basin City for 10 years. I know the requirements that are required to have group homes or group-like facilities. And you can't have group homes or equivalents without the facilities looking like what they are, which is institutional facilities. They're not like normal homes and related activities. They tend to have more rooms per household. They need to be set up for access. They need to be adjusted to meet the code requirements of such activities. And to do that and have them still look like the homes on the west side of Columbia River Road, which are luxury homes overlooking the river, is just not cost effective. The CUP, we were discussing grants the right to build 2 more buildings with no more oversight than the building department. So if the buildings meet code, they can look like whatever they want. There's no assurance they will not look institutional as a result of trying to be cost effective. With the Mirror Ministries proposals, the individuals under care will not be part of the neighborhood, etc., as they're not going to the facility for, as they are going to the facility for rehab to get away from the elements of a neighborhood. This is not a remote location anymore. All the area around this location is approved for zoning of 1-acre parcels. Just recently, the Planning Commission approved a zoning change just north of this area that converted some RC5 to RC1. The future City of Pasco proposed urban growth area land map comes to within 2.9 miles of the property under discussion. Again, this is not a remote location. There's also no assurance that after the funding, there is no assurance that funding for the maintenance of these institutional facilities will continue after the founders of Mirror Ministries build the facilities. We've seen a couple of group homes in Franklin County go out of business and their facilities get sold or auctioned off. Once built, it is rare that buildings get destroyed and new raw ground created. This is a permanent decision for the neighborhood. So for the protection of the neighborhood's appearance, property values, and safety request that you reverse the recommendation of the Planning Commission and deny this conditional use permit. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Any questions?
Again, I have no questions. I read all the read ahead and feel that you have done a good job on that, so thank you.
I too have no questions. I thank you for your presentation.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So with that, Derek, we ready to move on to the applicant?
Yes, I believe so, unless you had questions for me or something like that.
I have none at this point.
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Yep.
Do we have the applicant on the phone?
The applicant is here. This is Tricia McFarland with Mirror Ministries. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. It's been a long wait with COVID. Thank you for all you guys have done in the meantime. And yeah, this is a new process for me, so direct me if needed. But Mirror Ministries is been in business for almost 6 years now. We've been doing community-based advocacy, this same type of stuff, but not residential, for that time, almost 6 years. In the heart of Kennewick, we've operated with people who are, some of them still in the life, some of them gang-related, etc. And we have not in 6 years had any threat from any trafficker that's been of issue or a need to call police or somebody showing up and trying to get to someone. One of the realities is that once somebody is getting help and has somebody surrounding them and taking care of them, it's just much easier for a trafficker to, I'm sorry, I'm hearing feedback as I'm doing it. It's just much easier for a trafficker to go find another victim rather than continuing with the one who is getting that care and help. So we are now looking at a vision that we have had for the last 10 years, long before we became Mirror Ministries, where we know that there's a high need for residential care for victims of sex trafficking that are minors. We do realize that we could open a restoration home like this for adults with much less difficulty. We would not have to go through this conditional use permit. We could simply purchase the property and have the adults live there. Our goal is to work with the kids that don't have that availability already, and that's what we've been studying for the last 10 years, nationwide and even around the world, going to different programs and studying what's going on. We're part of several national organizations and state organizations where we get the most promising practices. So although I do appreciate your intelligent arguments, Mr. Attorney, I do also want to remind you that our commissioners and staff, I believe, know their job better than you do. And I also believe we at Mirror Ministries know what we're doing for this better than you do. You have a lot of great education on your parts, and I think you need to recognize that the other parties have a lot of education on their parts. So we do appreciate the Fields have created a beautiful property out there. That's why when it was brought to our attention, the people that we're purchasing from had intended to keep that property and live there and operate the business that's on site. And some life changes happened for them and they couldn't when it was going on market and was made available to us. Both the sellers and our agency believe that this is a perfect fit for what we're looking for, what we've researched and what we've studied over the last 10 years, what we're seeing as the most promising practices. We believe not only is it good for the agency, but that we'll be super great neighbors out there as well. All of our staff that would be coming on site is very carefully screened, background checks, etc. They're going to be the safest neighbors you could have. The kids themselves are always supervised, and they're not criminals, they're abuse victims. But yeah, they're going to have some issues, just like many other kids and adults already living within the community. Because let's be real, these kids are living in our community. They're living all around our Tri-Cities. We know because we're working with hundreds of them already on our community-based programs that we do. On this property, this beautiful property that the Fields developed, there's lots of privacy. It defines and fits what we consider the word remote or whatever that's used a lot. We're looking for something private, not within business areas of town, far enough away from town that you have a sense of peace and privacy, which you get if you've been on this property. They did a remarkable job of, it feels so peaceful and pastoral almost on that land. The buildings that we're talking about, all of them already exist except for a potential third home. We would be using the buildings that are already there. So they're already going to look like the neighborhood is used to them looking like. The potential third home, which would come sometime in the future if funds allowed, would be down at the far end of the property. So it would visually not look different from the rest of the neighborhood. I don't think anybody's, first off, you can't see really onto that property from anywhere except for the property that Mr. Fields has back there, or his parents do. And I'm assuming he would build a nice privacy wall for his community that he would be developing back there. Even with those plots, that 5 acre, there's only one 5 acre plot that would be adjacent to our property, and all the rest are stacked behind that. So there's only one potential plot of land that would be supposedly seen into our property. What they would see, though, is just going to look like any other residential home with kids that live there. Right now, the existing buildings include an operating commercial business. I'm not sure that the attorney is aware of that, but the current property has, as designed by the appellant family, operating commercial business stage more kennels, where they house up to 50 dogs in kennels. You mentioned in your brief argument about the sewage concerns. Well, 6 girls and even up to the potential 18 are not going to cause as much sewage concerns as 50 large dogs and plus the small pets that are there as well. You talk about the increase in traffic. We have a much smaller, we believe, traffic footprint than the existing business, as the existing business not only has 24/7 staff, 7 days a week for the dogs, they also have a grooming business. So you have customers coming and going, dropping off dogs and cats or whatever, for both grooming and for boarding. So you have customers and staff coming in, where we're going to have very limited on who's coming in to see access there. You also talk about commercial businesses that we would be having there. We would have residential group homes, starting with 1 home, potentially moving the current kennel business, renovating that so that it would become a second potential home, and then potentially the 3rd home. Each and every one of those homes would have a maximum of 6 kids there, and then 24/7 rotating staff that is always going to be monitoring and there for their care. The commercial business that you're talking about, I think you're a bit confused on what our model looks like. The equine therapy is simply for our own residents. Basically, we have horses there. That's what any neighbor would see is we have horses. We have kids who are riding horses. We have kids who are grooming horses. The therapist comes in and runs the program of the actual equine therapy, but it is not a community available program. Our schooling is a classroom where the kids get school online, just like every other kid in the nation at the moment, with a tutor that comes in to help as they go through their different programs, because kids might be of varying ages and varying backgrounds for schooling. What else did you mention? The horses, the counseling. The counselors do not see other clients on our property. The counselors come out to see our girls that are living there. The rest of their private business would be in town in their own offices. The rest of what Mirror Ministries does would be continuing in our own offices in Kennewick. The 2 different aspects of Mirror Ministries do not overlap, as far as we would not be bringing in community-based clients into our residential facility. It is kept private for reasons of respect for the kids in particular, so that you, just like you keep any other situation like that private, it's for their respect and their dignity. You mentioned the fact that we told the Tri-City Herald our location. That was a bit skewed there. Tri-City Herald, because of a neighbor that works along with the appellant, they posted the address and location of the site. Didn't make us happy, but thankfully we had just finished a national study that showed that we really do not have the threat from the traffickers that we believed previously, because we all kind of see the dramatization of what it looks like in Hollywood. We also have seen that in our 6 years of practice as well. Some of the comments about things like a 6-foot minimum fence, or sometimes it gets exaggerated much higher than that as well. We have never voiced the desire to have that fencing. That was something that was put in by the county as a condition. That's the word conditional use, in order to make the neighbors feel better. So if the neighbors are not wanting that, there's no need for that. It was suggested on the north and east side. The north side, looking over the Louder home, is already blocked by beautiful trees and shrubbery, etc. You can't see out that way to begin with. And then the east side is where it's the undeveloped land, farmland over there. There was also concerns about barbed wire and floodlights on chain link fences. We don't have any desire for chain link fences or barbed wire or floodlights, but those are currently on property, put there by the appellant family when they built and operated the currently operating commercial business of Sagemore Kennels. We of course would be getting rid of any barbed wire, et cetera, and any unnecessary chain link fence, because we're housing girls in a family style residential setting. We're going to be great neighbors with beautiful landscaping. We have people that are ready to get out there and really keep that legacy built that Dr. Fields had done with all of that beautiful landscaping and gorgeous roses. And all of the staff, as I mentioned, are carefully screened with background checks. And we do not see that threat from the traffickers that the neighbors, some of the neighbors are concerned by. I also would like to address that is throughout the brief and the arguments given, Mr. Fields claims to speak for the entire community. And we've had some neighbors that have been pretty upset about that because he does not speak for all of the neighbors. We had at least 3 neighbors that appeared and spoke at the meeting. There were several neighbors that wrote in letters, and we've had a lot more neighbors that have spoken to us privately about their support, and some of them that are also supporters of Mayor Ministries on a monthly basis. Many of them are afraid to speak up because it's a little bit like talking politics, I guess, right now. But there's, I think, once granted, if granted, we will be extremely good neighbors. We will be, we will look high-end family homes. We will not have any more traffic than what we're looking at right now. The people who are coming are well screened. Sorry. The staffing coming and going. The more traffic. The access road that you speak of, we do have access to that road. That has been granted an easement, but there's also already a county road on the other side and a road that is within our property that we can simply come up that way instead. For some reason, I wasn't around at that point, so I don't know why the Fields felt it was important to have that other access road. I'm assuming perhaps for the future development of the land behind us that they own there. I don't know that. That's just my uneducated assumption there. When we talk about zoning, we are, according to the state, we are a residential group home. It's a therapeutic setting because we have trauma-informed counselors. I should say we have trauma-informed staff that is there 24/7. So whether it's teachers or counselors or the house mom that's hanging out, whatever their role is, they're trauma-informed and ready to be therapeutic in their care. These kids are not locked in. We're not a prison facility. We are not a rehab. We are a restoration home. We are a place where they can live quietly and calmly so that they can get the healing and restoration that they need, so that they can go back into their own communities, their own homes or new homes as we help them adjust to that and live as strong citizens. What I want you to remember is these kids already live in our neighborhoods. We're not suddenly introducing something new. As a matter of fact, the people who have harmed these kids already live in our neighborhoods. We're not introducing something new, but it does give a place where they can find healing so that we can have a stronger community later. I ask that you trust us as an agency to understand that what we're looking for and that this property really fits that. So rather than questioning whether this is the right place for Mayor Ministries, we have researched that. We have been through that. So trust us on that part. And I'm going to trust you all on the legalities of whether the hearings were legit and all of that. I can attest to the fact that all of our dealings with the staff have been way above board. They've been informational on what we need to do, but have not given anything beyond basic information. I feel like everything was run very well. I feel like the arguments have been done well. We have been told that we have dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. We believe the county has done the same. And we respectfully give this over to the commissioners for any further questions and their vote.
Comments, Commissioner?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like to hear from our legal counsel on the RCWs and have them weigh in on legality of what has been said by the attorney Mark Fix.
We can ask Sean. I don't know if that's appropriate at this point, but.
Oh, that isn't appropriate? Well, then go ahead.
Just a moment. I said, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
We need to ask Sean. Or Sean or Jen, are you still on?
Jen is on the line, and Jen has previously consulted with the Planning Commission as far as guiding through that process. I think the best advice is for the board to review and consider the recommendations and make a decision based on what has been presented to the board at this closed record hearing. Jen, if you have anything else, I'll defer to you to weigh in on any further.
I don't have anything further. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so the board will have to make the decision based on the arguments they've heard today.
Thank you both.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like to have an open meeting on this with the public, but at this point in time with COVID, we can't do that. But until I can hear from the public, and what I've read in the minutes from the Planning Commission was that a lot of the neighbors were opposed to this. I think that we need to hear from the community where this is going to be placed, that they are willing and acceptable of this facility. I am all in favor of Mirror Ministries and what they're doing. In fact, before we have an open meeting, I'll probably be donating to them because I appreciate what they're doing for these young girls.
Well, there's been a number of letters that come in non-support from the locals. The only support that I have read are not from the local people around them. So I don't know what else you want to do.
Well, the last presenter said that there were some locals that were in favor, were afraid to speak up. I want them not to be afraid. I want to hear from them.
Why would you be afraid to speak up?
No, they were afraid to speak up.
I just said, why would anybody?
I agree, but she made comment that there were some neighbors in favor of it. I have not seen any.
Yeah.
And they're the taxpayers. They're the ones that have invested in this land. And I don't want to do anything to jeopardize their investment.
Yeah. Well, as I say, anybody can say that the locals are in favor of it, but that's not been shown. They don't have to speak up. They can speak up in letters form, email form, like everybody else. There has been really no local support from what I have been able to see.
Yes, I have too. I have not seen any local support.
Yeah. So.
And Commissioner Didio, this is Mark Fickus. Commissioner Didio, this is Mark Fickus. I'm sorry to interrupt, but while your thought, the law prohibits 2 open record hearings. So unfortunately, I think you're here to make a decision today based on the record. I don't think we can have legally another open record hearing before the commissioners. If you thought there was some gaps or inappropriate process, you might be able to remand it to the Planning Commission to start over. But that would, I don't know whether either party would want that, although that's a potential. So, but you cannot legally hold an open record hearing where you invite more members of the public to hear testimony again. And again, I think the county attorney would agree with me on that, Jennifer Johnson. So, yeah, that's it.
And yes, so this is Jen Johnson, and I do agree with that. At this point, we're either denying it or sending it back to the commission for a do-over, or accepting it. But yeah, we cannot have another public hearing at this stage unless you are denying or sending it for a do-over, I guess, to the Planning Commission.
Because we never had an open meeting on this to hear from the public. Just the Planning Commission, correct?
And that's correct. That's how these work. The open public meeting is at the Planning Commission level, and then they send a recommendation to you guys, but it is in the form of a closed hearing at that point. So the public has the opportunity to speak at the Planning Commission meeting, and then you would read their statement.
Well, with that said, I would make a motion to deny this under 2020-230 resolution.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd have to second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, thank you all. Finish our closed public hearing, and we'll carry on with our agenda. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Keith, do we have anything on the phone waiting?
No callers at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That'll move us on to office business, approval, pay the bills.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't hear Commissioner Peck on, but I see only one fund expenditure today, and I move that we...
This is Commissioner Peck. I
Oh,
just
yes.
got a text message from Mr. Johnson saying you're finished with the other matter. Is that correct?
Affirmative.
Okay, then I'll rejoin the meeting now. I just got his text.
Okay.
Commissioner, help me out where we are.
Commissioner Didier was just making a motion to approve the fund expenditures.
Oh, okay.
There's only one today, fund expenditures in the amount of $1,199,562.01. And this has been looked at by our administrator and 2 members of the auditor's office.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. With that, our next item on the agenda today is consent agenda, and it's 1 through 3.
Mr. Chairman, looks like we've got 3 items on consent and move for approval as presented.
I second with no discussion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to your agenda, Keith, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should have received, I believe late last night or sometime yesterday afternoon, a agenda summary report as well as a resolution and a contract, and I probably need to explain that just briefly. As you will recall, we have for a couple of months now been working with the TRIDEC to distribute CARES Act funding to the local business community, and they've done an outstanding job of working with us to get that done. Part of the CARES Act, however, was split into 2 separate funding sources. One was the original amount that was designated to the county, and then there was an additional $440,083 that I think you're aware of was specifically set aside to work with our local Associate Development Organization, ADO, which in this case is TRIDEC. We had presumed that our contract with TRIDEC included all of the funding that was available. The finance director at TRIDEC, however, caught and pointed out to us that we did not have that included in our original agreement. And so the purpose of this additional resolution here today is just to acknowledge that fact, that our intent was to include the $440,000 in the distribution through TRIDEC. It has been reviewed and it has received the approval of our prosecuting attorney's office. There is a fair amount of language in there, but it pretty much mirrors our agreement that we already had with TRIDEC. But it was just I don't want to call it just a formality, but in some sense it is, to document the agreement that we have with TRIDEC to include those funds in the CARES Act grants that are being awarded to the business community. So I'm happy to answer questions, but encourage your authorization of this agreement so that we can make sure that we've passed audit requirements and legal requirements related to our funding sources that come from the Department of Commerce at the state.
With that, I would entertain a motion for resolution 2020-234.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of resolution 2020-234 as presented and briefed by the county administrator.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you, commissioners. The others is just part of a kind of a continuing update. We have, in principle, reached final agreement with the Franklin PUD on assisting them with late payments from those who have been affected by COVID shutdown. And so I anticipate that we'll probably have a contract in front of you next week for approval, as well as one other agreement that we've talked about using CARES Act funding for our community. So I think we're moving forward very well. It's really put a burden on our staff as well as the staff of these organizations that we're working through. The other one I should mention specifically was through the Pasco Chamber of Commerce. I'm meeting with them this afternoon to make sure that we've got all the details worked out on that agreement. And then we're looking at a November 30th cutoff date, so that date is quickly approaching. There is some discussion and possibility at the federal and state level of either extending the deadline dates for that, or the possibility of additional stimulus money coming from the federal government to assist local communities. It's premature to guess where that's going to land or how, or the timing of that. So we are operating under the current environment where we anticipate having all of these funds distributed and completed by November 30th, and we're working hard to get that done. So we appreciate the response of our economic development organizations in the area, the Tri-Cities Chamber, TRIDEC, the Pasco Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, our coordination with city governments and with child care folks to get these applications in, get them reviewed and approved, and get money into their hands. And it's probably appropriate for me, perhaps a little premature because we're not at the end yet, but appropriate, I think, to thank all of those who have worked so hard to try to get this done in such a short amount of time. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you have.
Keith, one question that, as you just mentioned, there's been quite a strain on staff and discussing with them. It sounds like there's possibly some overtime involved in it. Is that revenue available from CARES for some of that reimbursement?
Yes, we in our CARES spending plan, we have included some level of funding for the county to get reimbursed for staffing costs to make sure that that we're not left behind. We're kind of at the end of the table in the sense that we're not the first priority, but we do have reimbursement coming for our overtime, for some staff work, particularly at the HAPO Center, for work that they've done with the National Guard to maintain that facility, as well as some law enforcement and corrections and facilities, other staff that have been dedicated to a COVID response. So we're tracking those with the auditor's office, and we'll be submitting that for reimbursement to the Department of Commerce.
Also,
Commissioner,
also
Commissioner
with,
Cook?
excuse me, also with the technical end of it with IS.
Yes, we have included the extra costs of technology that makes it available for staff to telecommute or work from home. In some cases, we've had to upgrade some of our technology. Those costs are being included. We did receive one small separate grant. I believe I want to say the Department of Justice, but I may need to be correct on that, to get some additional technology into our courtrooms. And then, of course, the Administrative Office of the Courts has allocated some funds to Superior Court to upgrade technology in the courtroom. But we are capturing those costs, and those will not be directly borne by the county either.
Okay. I understand. There's a comment from one of the commissioners.
Yeah, Keith, Commissioner Peck, you made an observation that the county is not at the head of the table on CARES Act funds. In fact, we're at the tail end of the table. And I understand the sentiment behind that, and I certainly agree, but let's not forget that every federal CARES Act dollar that we're able to use to supplant real COVID costs at the county is one less dollar that has to come from county taxpayers. So while we might theoretically be at the end of the table, those dollars directly benefit all of our taxpayers. I certainly agree with previous sentiments about getting as much money as we can to local businesses, but let's not think of funds to offset county costs as not being in the entire taxpaying community interest as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further today, Keith?
No callers on the line. I believe that's all the business from our end. Thank you.
All right. Anything further, commissioners?
Nothing here.
Mr. Chairman, I understand we start with our budgets at 1 o'clock today. Is that correct?
That's what I have on the agenda here with Human Services at 1 o'clock.
Okay, we're going to use WebEx like we did yesterday.
Hope so.
That's affirmative. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time, and we'll sign back in at 1 o'clock. We are adjourned. Thank you.